What's up guys, Rogue9 here, and only just over a week into the test server for Operation Steel Wave, and the rework of the ACS12 has already been buffed twice, because it turns out that the initial proposal for this gun fell just a little bit short of the mark. I have no clue what went wrong here, but the rework of the ACS has been a complete mess so far. First, it's so weak that anyone who touched the gun immediately knew how unplayably bad it was, and just as I finish my analysis of the gun, ready to start scripting a video, the damage gets buffed. I retest, reanalyze, script and start editing the video, and boom, another buff comes in and I have to start over for a second time. So, hopefully third time lucky and this video can actually finally come out. There are still a few little problems with the gun, but all in all, it looks to be in a decent state now. But let me start at the beginning and give you an intro into what is changing and why. The ACS12 full auto shotgun is being switched from 00 buckshot to 12 gauge slug rounds, and according to the devs, the reasoning for this is twofold. Firstly, there was a recurring bug in the system that increased the destruction capability of the gun to a level that it was never intended to have. If you ask me, deleting entire walls in about 1 second flat was the most fun thing about this gun, but if you've been playing Siege for a while now, you will full well know that Siege is a serious business and there is strictly no fun allowed. The second reason for the coming change is the abysmally low pick rate of the gun. The ACS12 only gets played around 1% of the time, and that is no real surprise. Even after all of the nerfs, the Alder is still possibly the best gun on defense, and the MX4 isn't too bad either. Who in their right mind would pick the ACS12 when playing serious matches? No one. That's who. So the question now is, how does this new full auto slug shotgun perform in terms of breaching and combat? Let's check out all of the hidden stats, crunch the numbers, and draw some conclusions. First up, let's go over a few fundamental facts about the new version of the ACS. It's a slug shotgun, so just like its cousins the TCSG12 and the BOSG.12.2, great names by the way, they still roll off the tongue like an absolute dream, just like those guns, the ACS12 falls into the full penetration damage category. This means that if you hit the arms of your opponent while these are in front of their body or head, the slug will over-penetrate and do full body or head damage instead of just limb damage. And furthermore, the slug will even go straight through one operator and continue on to be able to hit more targets behind, with a 30% damage reduction for every person or soft surface the slug passes through. The ACS will be the first fully automatic weapon that has the capability of hitting multiple targets with each shot, so that's definitely an update that will give the gun something unique that can be useful in the right situations, but won't really make the gun OP or annoying to play against. Besides this, the overall ammo reserve is being reduced from 121 shots to 91 shots, and both of these changes make sense and are in line with what you would expect from any gun in the slug shotgun or DMR class. But there's also some inconsistency. Both the TCSG and BOSG have an infinite range in Rainbow Six Siege. See the long-range demonstrations in the background now. But interestingly, the ACS is still only able to hit targets up to 40 meters away. Any further than that, and the shots will simply disappear into thin air, just like in real life. Why is this a thing with the new ACS? I don't know. If I had to guess, my money would be on the fact that this is simply an oversight. Normal buckshot guns in Siege have this arbitrary 40-meter range limit, and it appears that during the rework, the devs simply forgot to delete that line of code for the ACS, and so these brand new slugs still have the same range limitation. And yes, before anyone asks, I did report this on R6 Fix, and it has already been confirmed, so we will hopefully be seeing this fixed before Steel Wave goes live. Another apparent oversight that has already been addressed was the aim-down sight time. During the first week of the test server, the ACS still had the incredibly fast baseline ADS time of only 250 milliseconds, which could be sped up to only 150 milliseconds with the angled grip attached. Just for reference, that's 25% faster than any of the pistols in the game. But as mentioned, this has already been nerfed and the gun now handles more appropriately with an aiming time of 400 milliseconds, just like most other long guns. Back in the good old days, this full auto shotgun used to have a fire rate of 300 RPM, and for the longest time this was also the official stat listed in the in-game menu, even though this gun had received a stealth nerf in the background to bring it down to 220 RPM instead. This nerf was never officially announced, and there was a discrepancy between the in-game stats and the actual fire rate for quite a long time, but eventually the in-game stat was brought down to 220 to reflect the actual behavior of the gun. To me, this change never made any sense, because for pretty much all guns in the game, the fire rate always reflects the fire rate of the gun in real life. For the AA12, the real-life counterpart to the ACS, the fire rate is 300 RPM, so lowering the fire rate of the ACS broke away from the established convention of making guns in Siege handle similarly to the real world. Honestly, what I think happened here is that the original nerf down to 220 RPM was an accident, but it ran on unchallenged for so long that when the discrepancy between the fire rate and the in-game stats was eventually discovered, they simply changed the stat to match the behavior rather than bring the gun back up to its intended performance. But that's just a theory. It is of course also possible that the nerf was intentional and they just forgot to announce it in the patch notes and forgot to adjust the in-game stat. 220 RPM wasn't really a big deal when the gun still fired buckshot, but now that it will fire individual slugs, this appallingly low fire rate was definitely going to be an issue, and for the first 1.5 weeks on the test server, it was a major limiting factor to the ACS. But good news everyone, in a second buff in only a matter of days, Ubisoft announced that the fire rate is being pushed back up to where it was always supposed to be, 300 RPM. Finally, a minor issue that is a recurring one with many weapons in Rainbow Six Siege is that the real AA12 fires from an open bolt, and that means that it is not possible to load a cartridge into the chamber. So the 30+1 capacity we get in Siege just wouldn't be possible. It should be straight up 30, except that that would also be wrong because the drum magazines available in the real world are either 20 or 32 round mags, never 30. At the end of the day, fine details like this have no impact on the actual gameplay, so as much as they stick out to a nerdy bean counter like me, I'll admit that addressing these is maybe a nice to have, but definitely not a priority. So there are some initial nuggets of info, and now let's look at the gun's current combat and breaching capabilities on the test server. In terms of breaching, the switch over to slug rounds is a major nerf. The large capacity, huge spread, and full auto fire rate of the old version of the ACS made this gun an absolute meme cannon when it came to demolishing walls. With Operation Steel Wave, you can wave goodbye to the ludicrous destruction capability and say hello to a relatively sad new reality. Just like with the TCSG and BossG, opening up walls is possible with the ACS, but it's going to take more time, more care in terms of shot placement, and a good deal more ammo to open up a decent rotation or sightline. Essentially, the ACS is being fundamentally turned on its head. It will have much worse destruction, but hopefully more viable combat abilities. So let's jump straight over to those. When evaluating the gun's combat capabilities, it is worth comparing it to its closest competitor and rival, the TCSG12. All in all, this is the gun that is the most similar to the ACS, and at first glance, the stat comparison looks kind of promising, right? Lower max damage output, but great looking support stats in terms of capacity and handling. When it comes to damage, the weapon has already undergone a significant buff compared to its first iteration on the test server. It basically went from utter trash to bad to what looks to be just about right now. Ironically, the pre-season designer notes mentioned that the devs were poised and ready to nerf the gun should it prove too powerful. And let me just put into perspective for you how ridiculous that statement is. At 41 points of max damage per shot, which was the initial proposal, the damage per second of the ACS would have been 150, and that would not just have been the lowest out of all weapons in the game, but the second lowest, the RG-15 pistol, would have been almost twice as strong at 285 DPS. Half as strong as the weakest pistol in the game, and they actually thought that it might need a nerf. Wow. But good news everyone, all of this of course is purely theoretical now because the gun was already buffed to 59 points of damage, and this is how the damage drop-off behaves. Unlike every other gun in the game that has a simple linear damage drop-off, the ACS12 now has a two-stage drop-off. Up until 18 meters the gun does full damage, then it quickly drops off to around 41 points at 22 meters, before then declining at a more gentle pace until the damage bottoms out at 26 points at 35 meters. At first glance, all of this is roughly comparable to its closest rival in the game, the TCSG12, actually a little better shot for shot. But the fire rate is of course another important factor that needs to be considered, because as already mentioned, there was a second buff that finally undid the probably unintentional nerf down to 220 RPM, and we are finally back up to 300 RPM now. And hey, 59 damage means that you only need 2 body shots against light and medium armored opponents, so the time to down or kill should not be too bad, right? Well, at 220 RPM, the answer would have been wrong. But now at 300 RPM, yeah, the TTK is probably exactly where it needs to be. It takes 200 milliseconds or 0.2 seconds to fire off 2 shots, which is almost exactly the average TTK for the Defender SMGs against level 1 armored targets, which is 198 milliseconds, and actually a little better than the average SMG TTK against level 2 armors of 237 milliseconds. So as long as your target is level 1 or 2 armor and no more than 18 meters away, you're going to get a pretty average performance out of the ACS12. As soon as you're further away, fighting level 3 armors or hitting the arms or legs, you will need at least 3 hits, and that instantly doubles the TTK to 400 milliseconds, which is much worse than the performance you would get out of any of the normal Defender primaries. So the summary here is that under the best possible circumstances, you're going to get a just about average combat performance, and as soon as you get into medium distance, the takedown capability of the ACS is going to suffer a bit. Worst case scenario, hitting limb shots at long range, you could still need either a full second or even up to 1.4 seconds to take down an opponent, and no attacker in the world is just going to sit there and let you shoot them for a second or a second and a half without retaliating. The gun does still have a few plus points though. The capacity of 30+1 is very good. The recoil is extremely easy to manage, the initial hip fire spread is great, and the reload times of 2.7 seconds from empty and 2 seconds tactical are absolutely outstanding. This means that overall, the handling and ease of use will be amongst the best in the entire game. With the newly buffed combat performance, these soft factors could actually be a bit too good. We still have over 2 weeks of test server to go, and if the gun proves out to be a little too easy to use, then I'm sure we will see this addressed before the new operation goes live. It would be really interesting to revisit the loadout meta-analyses for Maestro and Alibi, but I will hold off a little bit on those for now because of how volatile the state of the ACS12 has been so far. There are plenty of other changes to test in the meantime, so look out for more Steel Wave insights coming to the channel soon. What are your thoughts on the ACS12 turning into a full auto slug gun? Good idea to rebalance and revive an underused gun, or just a potential disaster waiting to happen? Vote in the poll on screen now or leave your thoughts in a comment below. Also, if you enjoy the content on the channel, a thumbs up on the video is free and really helps us out, and if you're not subscribed yet, please do consider that as well. And with that, thank you so much for watching, I hope you enjoyed the video, and I will see you in the next episode.